On May 3rd, 2026, T. Mitchell posted a video to Instagram. She's in a dressing room. Her 8-year-old daughter, Maya, is right beside her. They're shopping for dresses for a family wedding. T's sister just got engaged, and they're making a whole afternoon of it. Maya is rating every dress on a scale of 1 to 10. At one point, she feeds her mom a bite of her cookie. They're laughing. T looks completely, undeniably alive. She posted that video one day before her body was found. And here is the detail that's been haunting everyone who's seen it since. 10 days earlier, T had posted something else. A short reel of her and her husband Matthew, arms around each other. Text appeared on screen as the camera zoomed in on her face. "He thinks we will grow old together." Then it shifted. "He will, but I'm Asian." A joke. A light-hearted dig about life expectancy. People thought it was charming at the time. "The foreshadowing is chilling," one commenter wrote under that post after the news broke. On May 4th, 2026, Houston police responded to a welfare check at a home on Kingston Street in River Oaks, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city. A babysitter raised the alarm. She hadn't heard from the family since Sunday night. Officers entered the house and found 4 people dead, all of them shot in the head. T. Mitchell, 39 years old, pregnant. Maya Mitchell, 8 years old. Maxwell Mitchell, 4 years old. And Matthew Mitchell, 52, T's husband, the father of her children, the man police say pulled the trigger before turning the gun on himself. No forced entry, no visible signs of a struggle. The children were found in their beds. Today, we're not just telling the story you already know, the basic facts. We're going in deeper. 5 theories have been circulating online and among true crime communities about what really drove this. No official motive has been confirmed, no note was found, no confession exists. But the confirmed facts alone don't explain the full picture. And the first place people look when they examine this case reveals a detail buried in the official timeline that most people completely missed. The question that hits first, the one nobody wants to sit with, is whether this was planned. Because the timeline doesn't read like an impulsive break. It reads like something else entirely. The family was last seen or heard from Sunday night, May 3rd. By Monday afternoon, a babysitter and a relative had grown concerned enough to call for a welfare check. Police arrived at 5:26 p.m., entered the house, and found 4 people dead. Here's the part that's barely been reported. According to records from the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences, all 4 members of the Mitchell family were officially documented as dead at 6:11 p.m., more than 40 minutes after police were dispatched to the address. Authorities have not publicly explained that gap. And the children were found in their beds. Not the hallway, not the living room, their beds. Maya was 8, Max was 4. If this happened while they were already asleep, while the house was still and quiet, sometime Sunday night or before dawn Monday, then it wasn't a moment of sudden chaos. It was something a person moved through deliberately. Now factor in who these people were publicly. T wasn't someone who lived quietly. She had just hosted a Houston Restaurant Association board meeting the week she died. 50 industry colleagues showed up, ate her food, and celebrated what she was building. The association president called her a bright star, someone they had specifically invited onto their board because of how dynamic she was. A chef who had been mid-planning a collaboration dinner with her found out about her death and said simply, "It's really shocking." The week before she died, she was the visible face of a thriving empire. Traveler's Table, the globally inspired restaurant she and Matthew had opened in 2019, had earned national attention. They appeared on diners, drive-ins, and dives. Beat Bobby Flay, Guy's Grocery Games. In 2024, they opened a second restaurant. That same year, a clothing line. The Houston chapter of the Texas Restaurant Association had just named them Restaurateurs of the Year for 2025. She was 39, pregnant with her third child and building something that Houston genuinely admired. And yet police confirmed there had been 0 calls for service at the Mitchell home in the 6 months prior. Not a single disturbance report, nothing on record. So whatever had been building inside that house, it was completely invisible from the outside. Criminologists who study family annihilation cases say this pattern is consistent. The final act almost never begins on the day of the violence. The decision comes first days before, sometimes weeks. The person continues their normal routines, appears fine, shows up, smiles, posts videos of dress shopping trips with their daughter. T captioned that last video, "The sweetest mom-daughter time." 24 hours later, she and Maya were dead. Did T sense something that weekend? Was there a shift in the air inside that house that nobody outside ever knew about? Did the kids notice anything? Those questions may never have answers, because Matthew died inside that house too. No trial, no interrogation, no confession. Whatever he knew, it went with him. But his silence isn't the only thing people have been examining. Because when you look at what the Mitchells had built and how fast another question starts forming.
In a Great Day Houston interview last year, Matthew and T. Mitchell were sharing their new venture, Traveler's Cart. But beyond business, they also opened up about their relationship.
How did you two meet?
We actually met through a friend of my wife's.
Their love story, more than a decade of marriage and 2 young children, but tragically, that changed Monday night.
Matthew Mitchell didn't come from restaurants. Not even close. He attended Emory University, spent years working as a journalist in London, Paris, and New York, returned to Houston, moved into the pharmaceutical industry, and eventually became CEO of the Texas Center for Drug Development, a man who had already run a company, who had lived multiple full careers before he ever stepped into a kitchen. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, he walked away from all of it, enrolled in culinary school at the Art Institute of Houston, earned a degree in culinary arts, opened Traveler's Table with Tea in 2019. On paper, it was a reinvention story, and for years, it looked like it was working. But consider the full structure of what they had built by the time they died. 2 restaurants, a clothing brand, a $1.2 million home in River Oaks, a 3rd child on the way. All of it launched within a 6-year window. All of it running simultaneously. All of it requiring the kind of sustained financial output that most people in the restaurant industry spend decades working toward. The restaurant industry is one of the most financially volatile in existence. Rapid expansion is not the same as financial security. And the gap between a celebrated public image and serious private financial pressure is one of the most consistent threads in cases like this one. In February 2026, just 3 months before she died, T appeared on Houston public media to discuss the financial challenges facing the restaurant industry. She was measured, she talked about leaning harder into the experiential side of the business to stay competitive. Not a distress signal in isolation. But in a separate interview from December 2024, she spoke openly about the constant stress of running 2 restaurants and the daily fear of failure. She said it plainly, out loud, in public. So what was Matthew doing with that same pressure privately? Because he walked away from a pharmaceutical CEO career to build this. His entire second identity, the reinvention, the risk, the image of the cultured, world-traveling restaurateur was tied to whether Traveler's Table worked. Criminologists describe a profile that surfaces repeatedly in these cases. A man who has built his entire sense of self around being the provider, the success story, the one who gave his family the life they deserved. When he begins to believe that's slipping, not necessarily when it actually fails, but when he perceives it failing, the response isn't to ask for help. It's to conclude there is no road back. No public financial records have been released. No debt disclosed. No lawsuit on file. Nothing confirmed. But the question won't go away, because the life they were living publicly required a great deal to maintain. And nobody from the outside knew what it actually cost. What makes it harder to dismiss is what sits underneath it, a separate layer of this story that most people haven't connected yet.
Let's hold it at your lapel. There it is. Cute, yeah.
T. Mitchell was 13 years younger than her husband. She grew up in Houston as the daughter of Vietnamese immigrants, spent her weekends working at her family's Vietnamese restaurant as a kid, put herself through the University of Houston, and earned a master's degree from Penn State in human relations. She had a career history that existed entirely before Matthew. By the time she died, she was the public face of everything they had created together. The one Houston's restaurant world celebrated, the one colleagues sought out, the one strangers on the internet were now leaving tributes for. Matthew, by contrast, had zero social media presence, not a single account. For a man who had been a working journalist who spent years crafting narratives, shaping how things were presented, making deliberate choices about what information goes where and to whom, the complete absence of any personal digital footprint is a choice, not an accident. In a birthday post she wrote for him, T jokingly said that when they first met, she was convinced he was a con artist or a married dad of 5 in the suburbs with an apartment in the city. She meant it as a playful tease about how private he was. People are reading that line very differently now, because the people examining this case are asking something specific. Who controls the narrative in a relationship where one person is entirely visible and the other leaves no trace of themselves anywhere? Researchers who study intimate partner homicide point to something that almost never shows up in police reports before these crimes. Coercive control, not violence, not raised voices in the driveway. Patterns. Who manages the finances? Who sets the terms of the household? Who the other person has quietly been shaped to accommodate? It's invisible from the outside, almost by design. And T was pregnant again. That detail carries more weight than it might seem. Research on intimate partner homicide has consistently documented that pregnancy is one of the highest risk periods for women where control is a factor. A new baby changes power dynamics, resources, and the shape of the future in ways that someone who needs control to feel stable can find threatening. Did something shift inside that marriage when the pregnancy became real? We don't know. We may never know. What we do know is that T's sister, Lee Mai, confirmed the deaths in a Facebook post the morning after the bodies were found. She wrote about T. She wrote about Maya and Max. She asked for privacy. She did not mention Matthew by name. People noticed that, and they've been sitting with it quietly. If you've been watching since the beginning, subscribe right now, because what comes next gets under your skin in a completely different way. There's another angle to Matthew that people keep circling back to, and it requires sitting with something uncomfortable. He was 52. He had already rebuilt himself, more than once journalism to pharmaceuticals to culinary arts. 3 entirely different careers. 3 entirely different identities constructed from scratch, each one requiring him to walk away from the last. That kind of pattern takes something specific to sustain. It takes a person who is deeply invested in the image they're constructing, who needs that image to feel real, and who has nothing stable underneath it if the image begins to fracture. Researchers who study these cases describe a psychological state that has nothing to do with a clinical diagnosis. It's about a specific kind of collapse. The moment a person in crisis stops being able to imagine partial bad outcomes and only sees total, final failure. The business isn't struggling, it's over. The marriage isn't difficult, it's finished. Life isn't hard right now, it's irreparably broken. And once that logic takes hold, the distance between the thought and the act can close faster than anyone around them anticipates. And Matthew was carrying something else on top of all of it. Just 2 months before the Mitchell family died, T's sister Lai had posted on Facebook about a devastating loss of her own. Her husband, also named Matt, had died suddenly. Doctors believed it was a ruptured brain aneurysm. Lai described herself as being in complete disbelief. The Mitchell family absorbed that grief in February, quietly. While the restaurants kept running, the social media stayed warm, and the board meetings kept happening. Grief layered onto financial pressure, layered onto a new pregnancy, layered onto an expanding empire that required everything from both of them every single day. What was Matthew carrying inside all of that? Privately, alone, with no social media, no public record of his interior life, nothing that gave anyone outside that house any window into what was actually happening? In October 2024, the couple appeared together on a podcast. They talked about the difficulty of balancing a restaurant family with a home life. They talked about it openly, as a unit, but Matthew said none of it on his own. Publicly, he barely existed. A man managing everything alone behind a face that the entire city of Houston saw as half of a success story. Something broke on a Sunday night in May, and nobody saw it coming.
The gut-wrenching scene unfolding tonight in a neighborhood on Kingston near Avalon Place, sandwiched between Westheimer and San Felipe.
ABC 13's Luke Jones is there right now. And Luke, we saw HPD Chief Noe Diaz out there. It's a tough scene for everybody to process.
Yeah, we briefly saw the chief here on scene. He didn't come over and say anything, and neighbors, as you can imagine, shocked and disturbed. This type of thing just doesn't happen here in this neighborhood.
But here's where this case goes somewhere most people haven't followed it. The question isn't just what happened. It's what nobody was allowed to see. T's Instagram was warm, intentional, full of color, family trips, restaurant milestones, the kids being ridiculous together. Matthew appeared in it regularly on a boat with the kids, wearing matching heart-shaped sunglasses with Max, laughing at a night market somewhere abroad. The family looked like a life people aspired to. But every single one of those images came through T's account. Matthew had nothing of his own. No perspective, no voice, no version of the story that was his. For someone who had built his early career on language, on narrative, on the deliberate craft of how information is shaped and shared, choosing to be completely invisible isn't incidental, it's architectural. And what it leaves behind is a gap. Not a confirmed secret, not an alleged affair or hidden debt or criminal past. Something quieter and somehow more unsettling. The possibility that there was a version of Matthew Mitchell that existed only behind closed doors, and that the distance between who he appeared to be and what was actually happening in that house may have been significant. He had walked away from being a pharmaceutical CEO, started over in an industry notorious for failure. Did it publicly, with a high-profile brand tied to a woman the entire city of Houston adored. He gave interviews about travel and food and culture and the philosophy behind the menu. He smiled in his wife's photos. He showed up. And then one Sunday night, he didn't. Whatever Matthew knew about his own interior life, the parts he never posted, the parts he never discussed publicly, the parts that lived in the space between who he seemed to be and what was actually real, it died inside that house with him. There was no trial, no testimony, no one under oath, no cross-examination that could have forced the full picture into the light. The narrative is frozen. A neighbor named Cindy told reporters, "I shake for the little kids." That's all anyone could say. Here's where everything lands, and why none of it feels like enough. The week she died, T. Mitchell hosted a board meeting. 50 people came, ate her food, and celebrated what she was building. The association president said afterward, "It looked like this was a successful power couple doing this together." Days later, her body was found.
It's just so tragic to have little kids. I love kids. It's just so tragic.
It is shocking. Unfortunately, this does look like a family matter. That doesn't make it any better, but it is shocking for sure.
And it's shocking no matter where it happens. It doesn't really matter what neighborhood this kind of thing happens in.
Exactly.
The comment section of her final Instagram post, the dress shopping reel with Maya, still exists. The early comments read like any loving response to a mother-daughter afternoon. "So cute. Maya is adorable. Those comments now sit directly above the ones that came after the news broke. I'm in shock. This is unbearable. Two completely different timelines living in the same thread and no way to unsee it. T was planning to attend her sister's wedding in Boston. She was shopping for the dress. She was alive in every way a person can be alive, building something, laughing with her daughter, planning forward right up until she wasn't. The Harris County Medical Examiner confirmed all 4 members of the Mitchell family were shot in the head. Matthew's death was ruled a suicide. T's death, Maya's death, and Maxwell's death were each ruled homicides. Police believe Matthew pulled the trigger. No motive has been confirmed. No note was found. No explanation was left behind. The house on Kingston Street is still there. And T's publicist, someone who described her not just as a client but as a great friend, wrote after her death, "If there was one thing about T, it's that she was always on her own journey. Always looking for the next adventure. She never got to take the next one." T. Mitchell was planning a future the weekend she died. Her sister was getting married. There was a wedding in Boston to get to, a dress to find, a little girl to bring along for the afternoon. She never made it to that wedding. Maya never got to wear her dress. If this story is sitting with you the way it sat with me, tell me in the comments which angle you think comes closest to the truth, because sometimes the people watching catch something that I didn't. And right now, with no motive confirmed and no one left to answer for it, every perspective matters. This case deserves more than one news cycle. If someone in your life needs to hear it, send it to them.